Porous borders, caring about feelings, reactivity instead of proactivity. This is why the world sucks, but not as much as the World Health Organization. WHO refused to call it a pandemic a month and a half after it already was.
What we see are epidemics in different parts of the world.
As mentioned before, this cocksucking diversity hire, Dr. Tedros, lavishly praised China's handling of the outbreak, their transparency, and how China is making us safer. It turns out Tedros came out of a communist regime in Ethiopia, and he met with Chinese leaders in 2017 to get a financial contribution for the WHO, following which China planned to build their own CDC in Africa, based in Ethiopia, of course. The WHO only cares about feelings, not health, though. They spend most of their time worrying about the name of the fucking thing, and gave it a completely uncharacteristic name, which is not really a name at all since there are over 400 different coronaviruses. But they don't want to stigmatize China! They don't give a shit about Ebola, which is named after a river. They don't care about MERS, which was Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or the West Nile virus, African swine flu. Fuck off. This will always be Wuhan flu, or Kung flu, or whatever you want. Political correctness is cancer, and this approach by the WHO led to many countries not taking it very seriously until it exploded right in their face. It is guilty of crimes against humanity, but nothing will happen as usual. More evidence political correctness kills. Italians had Hug a Chinese Day to make Chinese people feel better about all the racism. It probably also didn't help that Italy, like the rest of the world, sold out their companies to China, and they let 100,000 Chinese come back from Wuhan. Most of these Chinese work in northern Italy, which is where the virus exploded. The entire world has proven that if the next Spanish flu arises, which also came from China, by the way, our leaders are completely incapable of handling it. And this should be a sign that we put too much trust in them. The mayor of London says there's no risk of catching coronavirus in the metro. The Dutch prime minister said schools will stay open since children can't spread the disease. Florida doctors don't release info about where infected were because it's private. Even after northern Italy was quarantined, the EU refused to implement border controls. Health officials don't know how to wear a goddamn mask, apparently, and bureaucrats can just bring infected Americans back from the cruise ship on a plane with healthy people and not tell anyone. The U.S. Center for Disease Control completely botched their testing kits. They said anyone released from quarantine is not contagious, which is patently false. Even this kid's infographic knows better than them. And they said the virus only survives on surfaces for 2 hours, when there's even a study showing this is patently false. They don't recommend wearing masks unless you're a doctor. Translation, you guys can get sick, but not us. People are actually believing Chinese numbers are under control right now, while their factories are barely online. Muslims are encouraging going to mosques to pray the virus away. And some of them are collectively kissing walls. I could go on for an hour about all this shit. But the U.S., man, I was completely ready to chew out Trump for his failure on his handling of the virus situation. But as usual, the Democrats and media have thrust me in a position where I have to defend him since they flip-flop every fucking day saying, oh, the virus isn't that bad, it's just the flu. And then Trump cancels Chinese flights, and they say, Trump is a racist! Then they realize how infectious the disease is, but then they just report it like it's the fucking apocalypse and say Trump isn't doing enough. They're causing people to panic and buy all the toilet paper in the fucking world for some reason. And they make up this bullshit that he said the virus is a hoax. Then Trump stops anyone with symptoms coming from Europe, and they say he's overreacting again. He cancels all medical charges for testing, and people somehow end up with bills blaming Trump instead of the uninformed doctor. They even want to try to use this disaster as a way to win the election this year. The media is your fucking enemy for the 100th time.
Maybe we'd be just better off if we gave it to everybody.
Not just that, but they're also working as China's propaganda machine. Virus testing worked because China takes the problem seriously. Well, fuck Korea, I guess. Thank God this pandemic started in a country that took serious public health measures. Imagine if China was run by Republicans instead of communists. China sent aid to Italy. U.S. suspended flights. Who's the real superpower? Oh yes, the photo op aid. No, I don't recall the U.S. spreading a fucking virus around the entire planet. The media got literally everything wrong, and people still listen to them, since people are more worried about the racism of calling it a Chinese virus than they are about the real-time rewriting of history. I guess Korea's also hell-bent on ruining their progress, since their super special entry procedures rely 100% on personal admission of symptoms. It only suggests people to self-quarantine. They also won't restrict travel from any country, since it's mostly Koreans coming. Only by the 22nd of March will they be forced to self-quarantine if they are coming from Europe. But only if you're staying for 90 days, apparently. Because if you stay for less than 90 days, you probably can't spread the disease. I guess it's just Zhong that makes expatriates want to potentially cause a second outbreak, just to take advantage of Korea's hospitals. The entire world has completely failed, and it's damn lucky that the virus isn't that deadly, and will doubly fail when they don't hold China to account for causing this through their communist cover-up crimes. After this is done, the world needs to destroy China's economy by pulling their businesses and materials imports. In the US, FDA inspects only a small number of Chinese companies that make US drugs, and serious health violations are common just among those. 80% of active ingredients in medicines comes from China, including penicillin, heparin, and surgical medications. Trump talked about this before he was president, and everyone was calling him crazy. But now China is threatening to withhold medicine from the US to plunge it into the mighty sea of coronavirus. And why wouldn't they? Since according to the Chinese Ministry of Truth, the US is the origin of the virus now. China is a living 1984 simulation, while the rest of us are endlessly distracted living in a brave new world. We'll probably never even know the true numbers of the dead, especially from all the dead bodies that burn secretly in China. They've got crematories everywhere, but also in places like Thailand, who have a skyrocket of deaths from pneumonia. They don't list it as Wuhan flu. Italy pulled to China and changed how they count to lower the infection number. The Europeans are quickly finding out again that socialized healthcare seriously handicaps how many resources you have for emergencies, which is going to make the death rate rise. The UK has 15 beds available for fuck's sake, and Italy is literally giving up on taking care of the elderly because they're so overwhelmed. What else? We're not being informed about all the reinfections in China and Japan, which also happened during the Spanish flu, because humans seem to just keep repeating the same fucking mistakes all the time. Every time there's a problem, most of humanity slows people down, just going through stages of fucking denial. If no one wants to be informed, we're just completely committing suicide over and over. We're so stupid. Oh, there's a new Show Me the Money. I gotta go.